Have you ever heard of the flying tailor? It sounds like a character from a fairy tale, but it's the real-life story of a man named Franz Reichelt, an inventor whose ambition literally took him to new heights and then to a tragic end. His story is a powerful reminder of the fine line between genius and recklessness, and it all unfolded in the heart of Paris over a century ago. Franz Reichelt was born in Austria in 1878 and moved to Paris to start his own tailoring business. By all accounts, he was a successful tailor, known for his craft. But beneath the surface of a respectable tradesman, Reichelt harbored a grand obsession, one that was sweeping the globe at the time: aviation. The early 1900s were the dawn of flight. The Wright brothers had made their historic journey just a few years earlier, and the skies were seen as the next great frontier. But with this new frontier came new dangers. Early airplanes were notoriously unreliable, and pilots had no safety net. If something went wrong mid-air, a fatal fall was almost certain. This is the problem that captured Franz Reichelt's imagination. He wasn't interested in building a plane. He wanted to save the pilots. He envisioned a suit that could double as a parachute, a wearable device that would allow a pilot to safely float to the ground in an emergency. He called it the parachute suit. Working in his apartment, which doubled as his workshop, Reichelt began designing and building his invention. His first designs were essentially a pair of silk wings attached to the suit, which could be folded away. He later evolved the concept into something more like a canopy that would deploy and catch the air. Think of it less like a modern parachute and more like a bat's wing, a large, foldable cloak. He tested his early prototypes using dummies, throwing them from the fifth-floor window of his apartment building. The results were mixed. To be honest, they weren't very successful. The dummies often plummeted straight to the ground. Undeterred, Reichelt believed the problem wasn't the design itself, but the short dropping distance. He reasoned that his suit needed more altitude and more time to fully deploy and catch the air. Despite the failures, he was a true believer in his creation. He poured his own money into the project, crafting a suit from about 30 square meters of silk, all held together by a framework of rods and wires. The whole contraption was bulky and weighed around 9 kilograms or 20 pounds. He continued to refine it, convinced he was on the brink of a breakthrough that would revolutionize aviation safety. He even applied for a patent for his design. Reichelt was not just a dreamer. He was a man of action, and he was ready to prove to the world that his parachute suit was the future. To do that, he needed a bigger stage than his apartment window. He needed something iconic, something tall, something that would capture the world's attention. He set his sights on the Eiffel Tower. Getting permission to test his invention from the Eiffel Tower was no easy task. For over a year, Reichelt petitioned the Parisian police, arguing for the life-saving potential of his suit. Initially, they were skeptical. A man wanting to jump off the Eiffel Tower? It sounded like madness. But Reichelt was persistent. He framed his experiment as a scientific endeavor, crucial for the advancement of aviation safety. Eventually, he wore them down. The authorities granted him permission, but with one very important condition. He was to use a dummy for the test, not himself. Reichelt agreed to this condition, or at least he appeared to. The stage was now set for what would become one of the most infamous public demonstrations of the 20th century. On the cold, windy morning of February 4th, 1912, a crowd of about 30 people gathered at the base of the Eiffel Tower. This group included journalists, 2 camera crews, and curious onlookers. They were all there to witness the test of Franz Reichelt's parachute suit. Reichelt arrived, not with a dummy, but wearing the suit himself. His friends and the officials present were shocked. They tried to talk him out of it, begging him to use the dummy as he had promised. They argued with him, pointing out the freezing temperatures and the strong winds, which would make any jump incredibly dangerous. One friend reportedly told him, "You are going to kill yourself." But Reichelt was resolute. He was completely convinced his invention would work, and he believed a successful jump by him, the inventor, would be the ultimate proof. He famously replied, "I want to try the experiment myself, and without any trickery, as I intend to prove the value of my invention." He calmly climbed the stairs to the first platform of the Eiffel Tower, about 57 meters, or 187 feet from the ground. It's a height equivalent to a modern 18-story building. Up on the platform, he hesitated for about 40 seconds. Standing on a small stool perched on the edge of the guardrail, he looked down at the frozen ground below. The wind whipped at his large cloak-like suit. The cameras were rolling, capturing every moment. His friends below shouted up at him, making one last desperate plea for him to come down. But Franz Reichelt was in his own world. He checked the wind direction, adjusted his apparatus, and with a final determined look, he simply stepped off the edge. For a brief moment, it seemed like it might work. The suit unfurled, ballooning around him, but it wasn't a parachute. Instead of catching the air and slowing his descent, the suit just wrapped around his body, turning him into a human projectile. He plummeted, falling for just a few seconds before hitting the frozen, hard-packed earth at the base of the tower. The impact was horrific. The cameras, which never stopped filming, captured the entire tragedy. The footage is chilling. You see this small figure step into the void, and then the sickening impact. The official medical examiner later determined that he died on impact, the fall crushing his skull and spine. The hole his body made in the ground was said to be nearly 6 inches deep. The next day, the newspapers were filled with the story. Some called him a hero, a martyr for science. Others called him a fool, a victim of his own hubris. The film of his fatal jump was shown in newsreels in theaters across the world. A shocking and morbid spectacle. His story became a cautionary tale, a public lesson in the dangers of overconfidence and inadequate testing. So what went wrong? Why did Reichelt believe so strongly in a design that was fundamentally flawed? Modern analysis suggests his parachute suit was never going to work. The design was semi-rigid and simply not large enough to create the necessary air resistance to slow a person asphalt. It was more like a costume than a functional piece of equipment. Unlike a modern parachute that is designed to deploy and trap a large bubble of air, Reichelt's suit was more likely to just collapse around the wearer. He had become a victim of what we might call confirmation bias. He ignored the failed dummy tests, convincing himself they were invalid due to the low altitude. He was so invested in his idea, both emotionally and financially, that he couldn't see its flaws. He was a tailor, not an engineer or an aeronautics expert. He didn't understand the complex physics of aerodynamics. He was driven by a noble goal saving lives, but his methods were tragically unscientific. Interestingly, just 2 days after Reichelt's death, an American man named Frederick Law successfully parachuted from the Statue of Liberty from a height of 223 feet. He used a conventional circular parachute packed in a container, proving that a safe descent from such a height was possible, but not with Reichelt's design. The era of practical parachuting was dawning, but Franz Reichelt would not be a part of it. Today, the story of the Flying Tailor is more than just a historical anecdote. It's a powerful lesson about innovation. It teaches us the importance of rigorous testing, of listening to expert advice, and of being willing to admit when an idea isn't working. It shows the danger of letting passion blind you to reality. Franz Reichelt had a dream, a vision to make the world safer. But his tragic end on that cold Paris morning serves as a permanent reminder that even the noblest of intentions can't defy the laws of physics. His legacy is etched not in the annals of successful inventions, but in the unforgettable, haunting footage of a man who literally fell for his dream. Thank you for watching. If you found this story interesting, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more historical deep dives.